Hello, it's Margaret, and I'm here today to talk about my artifact. I selected option 3, which was working with families, to develop an artifact that effectively supports, informs, or serves as a method of communication with families of students with disabilities. First thing that was suggested was a brochure, and I immediately knew I wanted to do an IEP meeting, what to expect sort of brochure for parents, because in most of my SED courses, we touch on the fact that parents may not be comfortable, may not know what's going on, or even unintentionally be made to feel like they're talked over because they don't know the lingo or they feel embarrassed to ask questions and stuff. So I wanted to make a brochure that would help with that. And as far as I believe, I think this covers it pretty well, but I'll explain it and see how you guys think about it. So first, right here in the beige area would be the top fold. It's going to be a little bit hard to describe because this is supposed to be a tri-folded brochure, and that's just the introduction opening that says what's in an IEP meeting. The next part, which is the sort of reddish peachy color, would be the very back of the brochure, and I wasn't really sure what to put here, so I made a sort of artistic alignment of what the schools in the school system would be, and if there were any questions, this would be the contact information area. And then this blue flap would be what you would see when you first open the brochure. So I wanted to make it an introduction to the brochure more so than just the title of it, and kind of include some sort of statement and objectives from the school that every child deserves equal opportunities to succeed, and that the school system wants all parents or guardians to be included and have a voice in their students' IEP, because that is one of the most important things. So the actual meat of the brochure, I sort of put together 3 different types of infographics, and the first thing you'd kind of see when you open it all up, I included 10 terms to know, individualized education program or IEP, because we all assume that everyone knows what an IEP is, but maybe this brochure is being given to a parent who doesn't even really know what IEP stands for, so I tried to include a small definition, as much as I could, about what an IEP is, and I like to include that it was more than just a written document, more of a map, and really that it's essential for setting up success for the child. The next one is accommodation, allowing students with disabilities to demonstrate their knowledge on assessments without interference from their disabilities, as their non-disabled peers are able to do so, while not giving students with disabilities an unfair advantage over their peers. I know I have personally interacted with some parents who don't really want their kids to have an IEP or be labeled as special ed because they think that their kid is getting a free pass, or that they don't want that stigma, or that they're not going to learn as much because they're getting special ed services. So I felt that this definition really covered that aspect of it, as well as just in general giving an idea that an accommodation is not a negative thing, it's a positive thing. So another term is general education curriculum. We all know this is the program that just general education students are being taught through, but not every parent may know that term when it's being spoken by other people. They may think that it's something special, different, whatnot. And then I got into some of the acronyms that are used because they're used a lot, and not all parents are going to know it right off the bat or remember it even if it's brought up. So I went through assistive technology, behavior intervention plan, least restrictive environment, present level of performance, and then at the bottom there's, MUSER and the Individuals with Disabilities Act. And I think that including these would be a great source for some parents to look back on so that they understand what each of these things are. And I especially wanted to make note of present level of performance because there are so many different acronyms for these that it could be mixed up, so I wanted to include all of the ones I could think of so that there would be less confusion. I also talked about due process because if a parent does feel that they need to dispute something, they should know how to, or what term to look up to figure out how to, because it is very important for a parent to have a say, and if they disagree, they have a right to voice it. And so I wanted to include due process for that reason. Other than specifying MUSER, I tried to keep this as generic as possible, so whatever state this would be used in, that could go in the number 9 slot there for terms to know. And then the next segment I did was the tips to organizing IEP paperwork. There's a lot of paperwork, and I think that can be overwhelming for parents as well. And hopefully this little 6-tip organization plan could help them create some sort of binder or file plan organization tool, whatever they preferred. Went down the very basics. IEP team info, so who's on the team, what's their role, what's their information, and including other resources outside the school so that all of the people that are included can be kept in one area. And then the second one would be to include the current IEP. So a copy of the most recent IEP, and I would say even all of them, just the most recent IEP on the top. As well as concerns, direct accommodations, any notes on services a child receives inside, outside the school, anything that has to do with the direct implementation of the current IEP. I also noted to put down a communications log, so all communications, verbal and written, between the parent and the school. Personally, I feel this is pretty important because although the school is there to provide services and do the best job possible, things slip up, mistakes are made, sometimes people aren't great at communicating. So having a record of what's been said and done, what's been promised, what's been agreed upon is really important as something to reflect on, and also have if you need to bring up a dispute or go through due process. Next was prep for IEP meeting. So this section would include anything that happens between the current IEP and the review of the IEP. Self-explanatory. Historical documents would be next, including progress reports, assignments, exams, work samples, etc. Medical documents could be included in this section as well. And then finally, tools and resources. It's just a good section idea for any parent who comes across an article that they think really helps them. They could print it off and put it in there and highlight certain areas and just keep everything with everything else. So the final step is the IEP process, what to expect. I made this part as a goal to give the parent a general idea of the process, maybe a little bit of the timeline, and prepare them for what they're going to be walking into, because walking into an IEP meeting for the first time can be really daunting. And even if you're a pro at the IEP process, it's nice to have this as sort of like a guided step-by-step. Of course, the first step being the actual referral, and I included the tiered pyramid of services and stuff. It's hard to see zoomed out like this, but if you do zoom in when the paper's printed, it would be easier to read. Then I wanted to make sure the full template was showing when I was doing this video. Then the assessment is done. So assessments are done by the school, evaluating the child in the areas of their suspected disability. I also feel like this definition gave kind of expectations for what the assessments are, because some parents may not know what their child is being assessed for. They may think it's like a standardized test into special ed and stuff like that. So that kind of makes it a little bit broader spectrum there. Next is the identification, so the disability categories revealed by the assessment that was made in step 2. And I also included that the child will only be eligible for special education if one or more of the disabilities adversely affects educational performance, because that is the guideline by which qualification is given. Then the actual IEP writing would be taking place, assessments, PLOPs, referred to the terms, and all of the fun stuff that goes along with an IEP meeting, including kind of a split of steps here. Step 5, which is the placement, and I included a pyramid of placement options, and also that it must be in the least restrictive environment within provided services. So that also ties back into the terms to know, in that students will have the opportunity to be educated with non-disabled peers. So a parent will know that they will have the most chance to interact with general education students as possible. That way it can maybe ease some mind of, isolation or such. Then step 6 and 7, review and reevaluate, kind of give some idea, like every 3 years, no more than once a year, and annual review. Yeah, so that's my trifold brochure. I think that if this were used, it could help a lot of parents and just sort of curb some of the nerves maybe going into an IEP meeting. I hope you liked it.